All right. Welcome to Discovery Dialogue. Today, we will begin by focusing on state standardized testing. For introductions, I am Mrs. Panthy, the assistant principal.
And I am Mr. Martinez, superintendent. All right, so we're going to get started. We're going to give a brief overview today about standardized testing, hitting on the two big ones, iLearn and iRead 3. As you may or may not have heard, the federal government did say this week that states are expected to complete standardized testing. Last year, they did waive that rule, but this year we are required to administer them. So if you do have students in those testing grades, you may already be aware of the practice tests that have been scheduled leading up to that. The hopeful news is that it does sound like the state of Indiana is not going to use that data to hold schools accountable, but more so for informational purposes. But we will hopefully find out for sure that that's going to proceed in that manner here in the coming weeks. So as a reminder, as a public school, which Discovery is, we do have to give state standardized test pieces as outlined by the Indiana Department of Education. The four main test assessments are iLearn, IM, iRead 3, and WIDA. So just a quick rundown of what each of those test pieces are. iLearn is the Indiana Learning and Evaluation Assessment Readiness Network. It measures student achievement and growth according to Indiana academic standards. It is the summative accountability assessment for Indiana students. IM is Indiana's alternate measure. It measures student achievement and growth according to Indiana's content connectors aligned to the Indiana academic standards. IM is the summative accountability assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities in grades 3 through 8 and high school. iRead 3 is the Indiana Reading Evaluation and Determination Assessment, measures foundational reading standards to grade 3 students each spring. Based on the Indiana academic standards, iRead 3 is a summative assessment that was developed in accordance with House Enrolled Act 1367, also known as Public Law 109 in 2010. WIDA, the purpose of the English language proficiency assessments is to determine a student's level of English proficiency. WIDA provides the English language proficiency placement and summative assessments administered in Indiana. So as I mentioned, today we're going to focus primarily on iLearn and iRead 3. Kelly, you can go to the next slide. So the dates for these assessments, iLearn is April 19th to May 14th. Students do not test every day of that window, but that's the big window that we have to administer all the tests. iRead 3 is administered between March 8th and March 19th. And again, iRead 3 is simply for third graders. Ms. Panthy, next slide. So what is iLearn? Again, it's Indiana's summative accountability assessment. It meets both the state and the federal requirements in terms of accountability. The different pieces of iLearn are mathematics. So all students grades 3rd through 8th participate in math. All students in grades 3rd through 8th participate in English language arts. Students in grades 4 and 6 only participate in science. And then students in grade 5 participate in social studies. And then there's also the high school levels of assessments as well, biology and U.S. government, which of course don't apply to Discovery. Ms. Panthy, next slide. So iLearn is a computer adaptive assessment. How does that help my child? So iLearn is a computer adaptive assessment which adapts to each student's mastery of the content throughout the assessment. What this means is when a student answers a question on iLearn, his or her response helps determine the next question. The difficulty of the test will adjust to each student's skills to provide a better measure of what each student knows and can do. To kind of help you visualize that or think about that in a specific example, so say your student is being asked a question on computation. So they might start off with a question that's kind of right in the middle of what that grade level expectation is for computation. And then if the student responds correctly, they might increase the challenge of that next question on computation. Or in the opposite, if maybe they answer that question incorrectly, they might revert to a more simplistic form of that question the next time that student is asked a question on computation. But still, all questions are based on grade standard expectation. And then at the end, we'll show some links. And if you want to get some more information about the computer adaptive assessments, that's available on the IDOE's website. Ms. Panthy. How does iLearn support all students? The platform itself, which we're going to give you kind of a brief glimpse at the end, it does provide a lot of tools for students. There's dictionaries, there's glossaries, there's rulers if they need it, depending on the grade level, of course, and any specific accommodations a student might have, depends on the available tools. But there's a lot of resources and pieces on the platform that are meant to assist students so that they can best complete the questions. One of the things also is students participate in practice tests, so that way they are familiar with the test platform and how to operate it before taking the actual live operational test. Ms. Panthy. And then, of course, from the parent side of things, oftentimes we want to know when we're going to find out the results and what does it mean. So recently, the results have become much more a quicker turnaround. Of course, last year we didn't take it. The year before was the first year for iLearn, which was the spring of 2019. And we did get those results before the end of summer, which was a quicker turnaround than years previous. So the goal, I think, is within 30 days of the end of the school year, but ultimately those results are kind of based on a lot of factors. As soon as we get results, we communicate to families how you can access that, and it is accessible electronically. And then you can see those students' results. It'll come in the form of a scale score for the content area, and then also kind of let them know their overall student achievement in that grade level. And some additional information and resources are typically available on those reports as well. So I don't know that there's a defined date yet, but as we continue to get information on when we can expect those results, we'll convey that to families as well. And then, of course, with every test administration from the state level, there is a rescore opportunity. And again, on those results, it'll outline kind of the process and steps that you as a parent would need to take if you wanted to request a rescore. Okay. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Panthy, and she's going to continue talking about iRead 3.
So who participates in iRead 3? iRead 3 is a test that's taken by third graders statewide at accredited schools in Indiana. What does iRead 3 assess? iRead 3 assesses really all those foundational reading standards through third grade. So this includes basic phonemic awareness, blending sounds, context clues, antonyms, synonyms, and of course, reading comprehension. With reading comprehension, students will get a few reading passages and then have to answer questions based on those passages. So they have to be little text detectives and go back in and find those answers. To pass this test, it really is just to assess those foundational reading standards. So if your child can read and has those basic foundational skills, they will do really well on this test. What happens if my child does not pass iRead 3? So we as a school will determine whether to retain the student in grade 3 or promote the student to grade 4. Schools are required to provide students who do not pass with grade 3 reading instruction an opportunity to retake the iRead in the spring or the summer. So there will be other opportunities for students to try and pass the test if they fail the first time. Some students may also be eligible for a good cause exemption, which exempts the student from the retest requirement. Please note that there are no consequences, though, associated with the option fall 2020 iRead 3 window. Then we have additional resources. So once we post the video or recording onto our Discovery website, please go ahead and take a look at some of these awesome sites to help with additional resources for the iRead 3. These additional resources are from the IDOE, the Indiana Department of Education. So they're really helpful for you to be able to do some practice items or to look at the test blueprint to see exactly what your student will be tested over. And where can you find additional resources? You can go to the Indiana.gov website. As well, just click on these links that you see here. Again, these were released by IDOE, and I'm sorry, this is for iLearn resources, not iRead3. The previous slide was iRead3. But the iLearn resources, you'll be able to click on these links, and then it'll take you right to some great helpful tips and tricks to make sure that your students are prepared for the iLearn assessment.
And then that last link, if you can go back, Kelly, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure can. There we go.
That last link, if you're curious in kind of digging into what that platform looks like for your students, and you want to see what the students are going to experience, that's the released items repository site. And you can actually work through it and see what some former test items look like, and try to answer them yourselves, as well as manipulate the site. And we're going to walk you through a couple of those screenshots here. So go ahead, Ms. Campy.
Okay.
So this is what the landing page of the repository site looks like. So it's kind of set, ready to go. You can just hit the sign in now as the guest user, guest session. Go ahead, Ms. Panthy. The next screen it'll take you to is to select whatever grade level you're interested in experiencing. Ms. Panthy, go ahead. And so this shows you what is available for the 3rd grade level. So the top, you have the 18-19 released items. You've got ELA performance task. You have also math items. And then down below, you have 19-20 with some additional items. And then you'll see for 19-20, there's also the iRead3 released items. So depending on the grade level, you'll see the different opportunities that are there for you to experience. Go ahead, Ms. Panthy. So this is looking at one of the ELA items for 3rd grade. So you have the passage on the left. You'll see that it doesn't all fit on one screen, but the students can scroll. They can also change the size of the column to the left to make that passage section bigger. And then you've got the question on the right. And you'll notice on the top right, above question number 1, are some of the tools that are available depending on what the question's asking of students. So if you want to take the opportunity to go through, you'll get a better sense of kind of what it's like to go through these assessments that your students are going to go through. Go ahead, Ms. Panthy. And then we provided a math example. Again, depending on what it's asking and what grade level, there may be a calculator available. There may be protractors, measurement tools, whatever it is that the student might need to accomplish the task. Go ahead, Ms. Panthy. And then this was a sample from the iRead3. So as Ms. Panthy explained, there's different parts of the iRead3. And so this is one of those questions where they have to look at the sentences and pick the one word that completes both of them.
Okay, at this time, I am going to stop recording before we take questions